told the newspaper, and we read about that decision then in the newspaper. So that was 2 days before we were actually planning to wear them. And time passed.
How many kids in total were going to come wearing armbands?
There were going to be about a dozen, but then when, or perhaps a few more, but then when they had the ban was announced, then that dropped to 5. There were only 5. There were a couple of students that wore armbands that didn't have any problems, so they weren't part of the lawsuit. But anyway, we decided to sue in the federal court and worked its way up through the courts, and then we won at the Supreme Court, rather a large 7-2, victory at the Supreme Court. And then over the years, it has been referred to by many other cases, and so it's become the primary First Amendment case for public school students, and actually also for teachers. It's the famous paragraph, one of them from our case, is that it refers to neither students nor teachers shed their First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse gate. So that's how it turned out. It wasn't we were just opposing the war. That was our intention and our motive. But the years passed, and it's become quite a big deal. It's going to have its 50th anniversary of the decision. Will be next February.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, this is 1965, so there wasn't a lot of popular opposition to the war at that time. How was this received by your fellow students? Were they supportive?
It's funny because, like my friends, I grew up during the Civil Rights Movement, and my parents were involved in it. So I went to civil rights demonstrations, and I was called the N-word lover at school. I mean, I was really bullied over that. I kind of grew up with those expectations in a way. I forget where we were going with that.
Were you well received by your classmates?
Oh, yeah. Well, as a result, everyone knew, where I was on civil rights and the war. I didn't hide my opinions, and I was just a kid. But kids have opinions, and they pick up opinions, and they talk about things. So my friends that I already had, they already knew those things about me. So they stayed with me. And some of the kids at school bullied me, really. They harassed me. They called me a coward or a commie, things like that. But most people really just didn't care. That was a real surprising thing to me. It's a lot of, I talk about this to student groups, teacher groups. And so I get asked those questions quite a bit, but the real answer to that, how did people react question, is most of them don't react at all. But anyway, it was a real mix. It was a spectrum from people being proud of me, like I had a history teacher who actually bumped my grade up from a B to an A. He said he knew another teacher had knocked me down a grade over it, so he was compensating. And another teacher invited me to talk to his students several different years. I wore it in 10th grade, so I had 2 more years of school there. And one teacher every year would have me talk to his students about the war in Vietnam. So that was really.
So you were planning on wearing the armbands, but then they passed a rule saying that you weren't allowed to wear them, but you wore them anyway? Is that what happened?
Yeah. Yep, that's what happened. I got on the phone. We hadn't met again as a group, the students that were going to wear the armbands, after we had heard about the ban on the armbands. And so that morning, about 7:15, I guess, I got on the phone, and my younger sister had already gone to school with an armband. But I got on the phone and suggested that we hold off until we have a chance to meet together, discuss this new circumstance of the principals saying we couldn't do it. But a couple went to school anyway that day and got kicked out, and the rest of them waited. And then we called in the afternoon. We called after school. We called to the school board and tried to talk to the president of the school board to explain that we were not going to be disruptive. We were just going to wear these black pieces of cloth. And he said he didn't care. He didn't want to talk to us even. So at that point, I felt thoroughly justified to go ahead and wear it. And the next day I did. I could tell you a little more of the story. The actual getting kicked out part.
Let's hear that. Yeah.
I'd been wearing the armband all morning over a suit jacket. It was kind of dark. It wasn't black, but nobody really saw the armband, or those that didn't say anything. And my math teacher, I'm pretty sure, saw it, but he just didn't say anything. So I took off my suit jacket after gym class. I just got dressed again with just my white shirt and an armband over it. And it stood out really well. And then I went to the cafeteria for lunch and sat with my friends there. And some kids came over and were kind of harassing me and calling me a commie and this and that. And a football player came up and said, you guys have your opinion about the war. John has his opinion about the war, and John has a right to his opinion, so leave him alone. And I'm thinking, wow. This is a jock, and here he is defending me, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then an office worker saw it. She took the news back to the office, so I was called into the office. That was quite a conversation. It was a long conversation, and he didn't bully me. He was calm, tried to convince me that I was wrong. He had been a Vietnam or a Korean War veteran, and he said sometimes maybe I don't understand how during a war it's important to support your country. He said maybe I've been listening to the wrong people. Maybe I've been listening to some communist propaganda. So on. I mean, he was paternalistic toward me, but he was also kind of respectful. And then at the end, he said, "Now I'm going to ask you to take that off, and if you take it off, you can go back to school, and it'll be just like nothing happened." I said, "But I don't think you're going to take it off, are you?" So anyway, he kicked me out. He said, "Well, I'm going to have to send you home." Anyway, it was interesting to me because the level of conflict wasn't really as great as you might think. I don't know. I guess my principal, he could have said, "No, let's not have the ban," back when they had the meeting of the principals. But I think they were embarrassed by us. They felt vulnerable to the community to have any of their students expressing an opinion against the war, because the war propaganda really was such a strong factor, and everybody was being influenced by the administration line because of the limited number of news outlets and so on. It was the whole country was really kind of marching lockstep down this path, and being told that if we don't fight the communists in Vietnam, we'll be fighting them in Oakland, California. It was really hard.
It was a whole other world. It was a whole other world in 1965. Yep. And I was born in 1962, and I'm from the Bronx. Yeah, right. But even still, I heard a story you told, I think it was on C-SPAN, where there was only one black family in your neighborhood, and they weren't allowed to swim in the public pool.
Yep.
In 1965.
No, that was in the 50s.
Okay.
That was in a small town in Iowa that my dad was the Methodist minister in that town. one family, and the kids weren't allowed to swim in the swimming pool. And it was like the church youth group found out about that, and they decided to take it up with the city council. And instead of just correcting the problem, the city council got upset by it all, and the people that were in my dad's church said that he was causing conflict and controversy in the community, and they didn't want that, so they asked him to leave. And interestingly, when we got to Des Moines, to his next church, a very similar thing happened. We had invited our black friends. By then, our mother was set that we were going to know some black kids. We were going to be friends with some black kids. So she made connections. She made friends in the black community, and her friends that had kids became our friends. And so we invited them to go to church with us, and the same kind of thing. They didn't want black people in the church, so they asked our dad to leave again. It just broke his heart. It really did. He thought he was of the Christian school of thought called the social gospel. His thinking was that if you could just get people to understand that we're all part of humanity, then we could make a peaceful world. And that's what he was expecting would happen. But instead he was getting kicked out of church. And so anyway, that's when the Quakers, who have a long history of taking dissident positions, they asked him. They were very happy to have someone who had been involved in the civil rights movement. So at that point, we started attending the Quaker meeting, and that was very enriching to our experience, too.
It's fascinating because, I tell my audience that I'm a socialist, and I'm also a Christian. I'm a born-again Christian. And to some people, it makes their head explode. They just can't get the concept. It's like, what? That's impossible. Just watch their head explode. Now, I have a quick question for you. Now, you've been influenced a great deal by your parents, what they've instilled in you, their morals and their beliefs. How about your brothers and sisters? Did any of them lose their path and vote for Trump or anything like that? Or are they still...
no, not really. Our older brother, the firstborn, like when we were growing up and we were turning into hippies, he was kind of turning into a cowboy. So he's very blue collar and very competent heating and air conditioning technician, self-employed. But his politics are mainstream Democratic Party. So our big argument was over Hillary Clinton, and he was insisting that we must support Hillary Clinton. I was insisting that no, not necessarily. Anyway, no, most of us, I would say, I honestly, it's like, well, how much of it is your parents' influence, and how much was it that your parents just had it right? That's really how I kind of view it, and I've never really. It all just made so much sense. The worldview that I got from them made so much sense that I still have it. It's like I still see things in roughly the same way.
Now, how did it come about that the ACLU heard about your situation there?
Well, we got a call from a guy named what's his first name, Kunstler.
Oh, really? William Kunstler?
Yeah, William Kunstler called us right up, and he said he would be our lawyer pro bono, because he thought we had a First Amendment case. And so my parents asked around to the people they knew, who is William Kunstler? And they said, no, don't use him. He's too radical. So the